My name is Val, and I've been posting many language-related videos on this language channel. Um, so I want to uh, abridge them. Um, say the tell you the basics you have to learn um, about how to go about learning languages. First and foremost, continuity. The secret is to do your homework, I say, to be exposed to the language every single, every given day. First tip. Second tip, let's say, is an upshot uh, of the uh, first tip. Be exposed to a kind of language that is near your level of comprehension. Too easy, you're not learning anything. Too difficult, it goes over your head. It means you're not really learning because it's too difficult and it becomes frustrating. When you understand most of what you hear, but not everything, like 95%, it's a roughly estimate, is good. This is the first tip, and the second is a tip on the first tip. The second thing you should do is to acquire a linguistic mentality. That means that learning a foreign language is not just substituting your uh, language words for the new language words, but enter a whole different structure. So try not to rely much on your first language, but try to infer words directly from the language you're learning. So a good exercise is always learn from text in the target language rather than translating from your language into the second language, unless you are corrected by a professional. But that is a very specific exercise, and um, normally learn the language from the language and not from Italian through just using a dictionary. So first tip is every day. Second tip is learn the language, hearing the language, listening to the language. Third uh, tip is to learn from your mistakes. That means that you should be able to detect your mistakes. Uh, how can you do that? Because I said before that you should be exposed to the language rather than translating from your language into a second language. There are, now that I think of, some ways to know. You can get a text in the target language, translate into your native language, put it aside some days, forget the original text, and then try from the text you have in your original language to translate back into the language um, you have the text, and you see that if there are mistakes, sometimes maybe there are not mistakes, there are just other words. should try to use a dictionary. You learn from your mistakes when you deal with native speakers. So every bloody time you have the chance to speak to a native speaker, exploit it. I know it can sound funny, but you take notes of your mistakes. If you cannot take notes, well, because the situation is not suitable for that, make a mental note if you can. You should have a kind of structure in the mind to pin this mental note. So this is another kettle of fish. Maybe I'll speak about that. So let's sum it up. Every day, try to use the target language than your first language. And when you use the target language 3 times, make the most of our mistakes. So write them down, check them, and try to understand why. Every mistake you make and you correct is one mistake and the lies in the future. So strangely enough, not voluntarily on purpose, if you make a lot of mistakes and they are corrected, you're learning a lot. Okay? I'm speaking off the top of my head. Fourth, try to like what you're doing. Take it as a challenge. So there are difficulties, sometimes drawbacks, and some you feel frustrated because you don't find the right word, you make stupid mistakes. That's part of the game. No pain, no gain. So take into account that you're bound to make mistakes, and that this is what learning languages is all about. Is learning also by trial and error. So don't be frustrated if you make mistakes. Fifth thing that is sometimes connected with the first tip, the tip on the first tip, raise the bar. Don't you reach a plateau level and you stay on that. This is typical. If you want to move on, make headway, try always to find new challenges. Buy new books with, for example, idioms, study them, try to be active, try to see on the net what's good for you, and so you surf the web and you try, oh, this is something I know, this is something useful. Another tip concerning just English is that be aware of the fact that there are 2 varieties of English. Mainly you have sub-varieties, but mainly you have British English, which is English in England, kind of Scottish, Welsh, Irish. It's not really British and don't take into account because unless you live in Ireland, it's useless. Kind of British English is Australian English and South African English, or American English with, American English is USA and Canadian, which are very, very, they are very similar. Once you decide one standard, try to focus on that and be consistent. If you want to, you will be exposed anyway to American English if you study British English, and a little bit less, but also the other way around. So distinguish what is British and what is American. I know it sounds a little bit uh, too fussy to mm, but you should do that. Other things is yeah, one thing that comes to my mind is some people are stuck with mistakes. You learn, sometimes we learn our own form of English or the language we're learning, and we are convinced that it is right. That oftentimes happens when you learn your language, the focus language, trying to invent because you don't know something and you come up with something. People don't correct you, and you convince yourself of the uh, rightness, justness of what you do. Okay, somebody's calling. Sorry. Bye.